Well, it finally happened. I was canceled by myself. It's funny because I always joke about how the only person able to cancel me is me. And it turns out it's not too far off from the truth, because like no one pressured me to make this video. I mean, I could have easily ignored this and carried on with my life without a care in the world. But if I mess up and am not consistent in what I preach, I want to take accountability when I'm not able to do that. And most of all, do it before it's actually even necessary in the first place. Because sometimes when you get called out for something and then take accountability after it, it leads people to wonder if you genuinely had a change of heart or just like pulling stuff out of your ass just because you got in a little bit of trouble. So what did I do wrong? Did I steal a kid's freaking Charizard or something? Did I do a trade-up challenge? Well, it's in regards to a video I posted yesterday about a self-proclaimed Pokemon scalper, which he may or may not have been joking about. I'm not really too sure, but I'm under the assumption that it was a joke. But in my video, I stated that he is a Pokemon scalper. No, I don't really watch his content regularly, nor do I even know if he has actually directly scalped Pokemon product before, but the example I used in my video, at least, was flawed and inconsistent with what I preach. In his video, the person stated that he bought a Journey Together booster bundle for around $50 and then sold it for $60, and I called that scalping. Well, under the definition, I don't think that constitutes as scalping because he is not getting it for MSRP and selling it for even more of a profit. What he is doing is more reselling than scalping. If he bought these bundles for MSRP, however, and then sold it for $60, then that would be considered scalping. When it comes to the morality of these two terms, it gets very subjective because some will say they're virtually the same, others will say it's completely different. So I can't really state on which one is actually inherently worse because it really all depends on each individual person and how they interpret it. Now, although the way we interpret how damaging these different terms are, the term itself normally has a set meaning behind it. But this isn't just to clarify my mistake. I also want to share what these terms actually mean in the first place. What's the difference between a scalper, reseller, flipper, and investor? The more people understand the meaning behind these different terms and decide to separate them, I think the better our conversations about these topics will be. So let's start off with a scalper. What is it? I think it's somebody who buys Pokemon products in mass before others can, mostly for MSRP, and often using bots or buying a lot from a store just to sell them at a much higher price, majority of the time immediately. These people take advantage of FOMO, and because they have a disproportional amount of product than the standard person, they produce an artificial scarcity of said product, because then they become one of the select few who actually have this much of that thing, and it leads to people going on third-party sites in order to obtain it. Now, resellers are pretty much who buy everything they want regardless of FOMO or regardless of it being MSRP and resell it for a profit. They also don't buy as much in quantity, at least not normally. If they do, and if it's not really a hyped and in-demand product, maybe it's out of print or something, they would still be considered a reseller. However, this is where you kind of have to put a little bit of nuance to it, because if a reseller is buying in mass, and if it's a hot in-demand product, then they would be more closer to a scalper than vice versa. And also, the term reseller doesn't just target just products in general, it targets cards too. If you buy a card and sell it afterwards for a profit, then, well, you are a reseller, even if it's just one card. Now, the same thing with flippers. They target a wide range of products, not just hype and in-demand stuff, and they normally sell it in a very quick time frame. I'm sure there are cases where flippers target in-demand products, and if that happens, then the quantity of the product that they get is going to be the deciding factor of whether they are a quote-unquote scalper or flipper. It's also heavily dependent on the price they pay it for. Investors are people who target a wide range of products and hold them for the long term in order for them to appreciate in value and then later sell off. The time in which you sell the product is actually one of the most important factors that decide whether you are an investor or not, and there isn't really a timing that is agreed upon. But normally, and this is just coming from my perspective, you're free to share what you think the correct time frame is. But from what I've seen, holding on to a product for 1 or more years seem to be the norm. So in very simple terms, and as concise as I can, scalpers are people who buy hot in-demand products in large quantities, usually at MSRP, and sell them. Resellers are people who don't necessarily buy just hot and in-demand products, and they're flexible on the quantity they get as well as the price, as long as they make money in the end. Flippers are basically like resellers, except the time in which they sell the product are normally in a much quicker time period. Investors are people who buy product regardless of the demand or the hype, and hold on to them normally for more than 1+ years. It could go all the way up to 30 if they really wanted to. There isn't really a set end date for what constitutes as an investor. However, the longer you keep the product, the more it tends to be acceptable, at least in the public's view. So that is just a quick summary on what these terms actually mean. And as you can see, once you kind of lay it out, they're a lot more closer than what they may seem. However, I still think that there is actually a lot of nuance between these different terms if you go deep enough. Pause. That sounded freaking wrong. Back to the video that I did yesterday, I will say that I still think my other points about the said person is still valid. For example, when he attacked one of the commenters for expressing that they didn't like how he was selling at market price and how they just need to get a life, which is just not really a good argument because that could be easily applied back to him. But yeah, I just wanted to clarify that I did get it wrong in that example that I've used in my other video, because I do like being consistent in what I talk about, because I also criticize other people for not being able to do that. So I think it's only fair that I put myself on the same standard. Again, I'm not proposing a moral argument that a reseller is technically better than a scalper or vice versa, because I feel that for a lot of people, it's basically the same, right? I just like getting the facts right, and when I get it wrong, it freaking triggers my OCD, okay? I also think it's just good to kind of clear the air on what these terms mean and kind of give my perspective, because I feel people throw around the word scalper quite a lot, and overall, I just feel like the topic lacks just a little bit of nuance. Anyway, that's pretty much about it. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you later, weeps. Officially canceled. Can't believe it. Oh my god.
せーのでもそんなんじゃダメもうそんなんじゃほら心は進化するよもっと